All right, then. We are live. Hello, everyone. Let's see. Okay, so let me just get to my channel so I can see your guys' comments and stuff. Okay, YouTube channel. There we are. Make sure yeah, all right, there we go. All right, so who do we got here? We got Max, we got Mike, Moonzer, Ella. Hello, everyone. Hello, Jackson. Hello, QE2 fan. Hello, Logan. Hello, Kevin. Awesome. Good to see you all here. So I'll keep this nearby so I can see when you guys comment. There we go. All right, so Lucy says, "Good evening, Alex. From here in South Warwickshire, England." Awesome. Well, hello. Yeah, I did this live stream earlier than usual because I wanted to make sure that my friends in the UK were able to see it live, you know, because I know, like, for me, this is 1 p.m. and I prefer to do my live streams in the late afternoon, but then a lot of people in the UK are asleep by then. Oh, that was weird. I thought I saw someone standing at the end of that hallway. I was like, there's not supposed to be anyone over there. All right. Hey, Jeffrey, how's it going? Squidgy Top, how's it going? All right. So I guess we'll just kind of wander around. Everybody's asking how I'm doing. I'm doing all right. Nothing much. I did finish a video which will debut tomorrow, and that will be at 2 p.m. Pacific time, so essentially 1 hour from now, but tomorrow. So yeah, gosh, this is a beautiful room. I don't think I've walked into this room very often. But one of the things I love about it is the quilted maple walls. That's my favorite kind of wood veneer. This and Makassar ebony, those are two very beautiful wood veneers. And what's great is, I guess whoever stayed in this cabin would have had a view, well, or at least a partially obstructed view of the private promenade just out there. So, Ella says, "Hi, Alex, everyone. So happy to finally be able to catch one of your live streams again. It's been too long." I know, and it's been a while since I've done a live stream. I've just been really busy, and some of that busyness has been just trying to get another video out. So yeah, I've really got to hurry up and do videos faster because, you know, I myself cannot do just one video a month. It just doesn't work out very well that way. Here's another cabin I'm rarely in. I like the ceiling on this one. Jeffrey says, "Are you going to do tea times again?" I want to, and one of the reasons why I haven't done it is because for like the past solid week, we've had a really bad heat wave. It's been like 107 degrees here, which, if you know, Portland, Oregon, that's an unusual temperature. It never gets that hot. So we've had a really crazy heat wave. Even my air conditioning has been struggling to keep up. So that's why I haven't done any tea times. But today is a cooler day. So today it's 90 degrees out today. So the AC is keeping up a little bit better, and I made myself some tea. It's in a mug, but nevertheless, I have made myself some tea. English breakfast. Oh, that's good. I mean, I know that the tea is good, but I like tasted that. I'm like, oh, that's really good today. Yeah, English breakfast tea today. So Gosh, these are beautiful rooms. I was talking, who was I talking to? I was talking to someone about how it would be so cool, like, if I had the money to build my own house, like, actually, like, design and have it built, it would feature multiple architectural styles. Almost every room or section of the house would be a different architectural style, but one of the ones I'd love to have is this Edwardian style, and then and most certainly I want Art Deco for sure. You know, like a British Art Deco, the way Queen Mary has on the interiors of the ship. Because American Art Deco is okay, but it's a bit flamboyant. It's very much like in-your-face kind of Art Deco, and it's okay. I like it. But I prefer the more subtle British Art Deco. But yeah. Oh, sorry. I get lost going down these corridors. I'm just looking for other rooms. But one of the key ways you can find a room, at least so far that I've seen, is if you see like this daylight here shining on the opposite wall, then you know there's an open room. So let's see. Oh, I like this one a lot. There's a lot of the marquetry panels, or is it considered marquetry if it's not artwork? It's I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah. Ella says it's 10 p.m. in Austria. Oh, wow. Logan says, are you going to do a Queen Mary update this month? I would like to. I have gathered a bunch of information for what I would like to discuss in the Queen Mary update. But the thing is that I rely on my friend Chris to go to the Queen Mary for me to film all the stuff I need him to film. And so I was waiting for him to get back from his vacation. He was on an extended vacation with his family. And so, but he just got back, and I don't want to like be like, hey, glad you're back. Now go to the Queen Mary for me, you know? So I'm giving him some time to get settled back in at home. And, but yeah, I am going to ask him to go to the Queen Mary to film for me. I've already written a list of places I need him to film. But this is also what am I trying to say? When he goes to the Queen Mary, it won't just be for filming for the update, because actually I've got some places for him that I want him to go so I can create an updated Queen Mary virtual tour video. Some of you guys have seen my virtual tour video where in 2020 I compiled a bunch of extra footage that I shot for a vlog, but turned it into a narrated tour of the ship. And I want to redo that video with footage that was specifically shot to give you a tour, because the footage I shot in 2020, I never intended to make a tour with it. It just ended up being a tour when I kind of wanted to create one. But this time around it'll be longer. It'll be almost an hour long, probably exactly an hour if people will watch it. But it'll be a full narrated tour of the ship with updated video footage of how the ship looks today after a lot of its refurbishments have been completed, that kind of thing. So I'd like to do one every year if I can. You know, compile a bunch of video from a whole year and then do it. We are right now in the a la carte restaurant on Titanic, C deck. All right, let's see. What do we? So yes, so the Queen Mary update. I'm gonna see if he can go within the next week or so, maybe this weekend. 'Cause I know he generally has more time on weekends, so I'm gonna see if he might be able to go this weekend. You know, be there a couple hours, shoot some footage, and then if he's able to do that and send the footage to me, then I will put together my Queen Mary update video for this month. If not this month, it will probably have to be next month. But But yeah. So let's see. Lucy says this stream is the reason why I subbed to Alex's channel. Best demo 401 streamer in my opinion. Oh my gosh, that's so nice. Thank you so much. All I do is really just walk around, but I mean, there are a few things I try to do to make this a bit easier on the eyes, which is like slowing down the movements, you know, taking time to really appreciate some of the images and the scenery. Because I know one thing, when this demo first came out, well, not this specific one, but an earlier version first came out. Oh, we were on B deck, not C deck, I'm sorry. But I was watching a bunch of people do tours of the demo, but they would like move around real quick, you know, whip the camera around, and it makes you feel really motion sick when people do that. And so I was kind of like, I'm going to do one that's a bit more laid back, a bit calmer. You know, when I need to go somewhere, you know, I'll do that. But, oh, you know what? This might be a cool... Where's my... There we go. Aha. Okay, so... hello, Eddie. Lucy asks, is that walnut panels or mahogany? I'm wondering, Lucy, if you mean like out here where I was. I don't know for certain. It looks like it could be oak. But, like, I know these panels here were not rare wood. But there were certain areas, like certain rooms that did have rare wood. But I don't think it was this area. Let's go into the Maids and Valets saloon. This is where the passengers who brought their maids and valets with them, this is where they could dine, and, you know, because they had to have their own separate space for it, because it's just, you know, the classism and all that kind of stuff. You couldn't have people, even today, if people have, like, you know, a personal assistant that comes with them everywhere they go, they probably don't dine together. So, look. I must be getting behind on the comments. That's probably why. Oh, Lucy, in the room we visited with the green carpet floor. Oh, okay. I don't remember. Veronica says, hi, Alex. There's a Titanic exhibit in LA going on now. Perhaps your friend could also film there, too. I don't know that he would. He actually just came back from Belfast, and he was, like, filming, you know, well, probably not filming, but visiting everything Titanic-related when he was there. So, I don't know. Yeah. So, this is, for, oh, geez, this is for I used to remember this. This room was for specific, yeah, okay. This is for the people who worked on board the ship who did not work for White Star Line. So this is for, like, let's say the Marconi wireless operators. There were two guys. So they would eat here. There were like a few other people. They did stuff for other companies, but it was aboard Titanic, so they would have eaten here. So it's interesting because, you know, they would have been separated from, you know, servants, but still separated from passengers. So, but yeah, this is a little galley for serving up, you know, the tea and treats and stuff. I gotta remember to drink my tea before it gets cold. Some people making swimming pool jokes. Always with the Titanic and the swimming pool jokes. So, pretty nice. It's interesting to see kitchens with, you know, the wood cabinetry and stuff. They obviously had stainless steel, you know, or it could just be polished steel, but it's interesting because, you know, like I worked in kitchens for a long time. I was a chef, and it's weird to see wood in a kitchen like this, you know. Here's a map of all the available places you can go on the ship. Everything that's like a dark salmon color is where you're able to walk. The light salmon color is what you can see from certain vantage points. And then everything that's white is places you can't go or see. I got kind of turned around here. I think this is heading aft. There we go. So Slow Snail Studios was saying that that little room next to the maids and valets saloon that I was showing you guys, that was for the Marconi wireless operators and the postmen that were aboard the ship. Because remember, this was a Royal Mail ship, so, or some people say Royal Mail steamer. It can be both. Believe it or not, folks, RMS can mean Royal Mail ship or Royal Mail steamer, because not all RMS ships were steamers. So, but yes, the postman that worked aboard the ship would eat there. So this is a barber shop. Did it double as a salon? No, I think it was just, well, I don't know. On the Queen Mary, they had salons, one for each class. So I think Titanic only had one. But on Queen Mary, there was one for each class. And they doubled as a salon and a barber shop. So, and on Queen Mary, they would have had a curtain separating the men from the women. So, or am I thinking, well, no, actually one of them did that. I think, no, the second and third class barbershop / salons on Queen Mary were separated by a curtain for male and female. But in first class, there was a separate salon for women, and then there was a separate barbershop for men in first class. I'm trying to remember everything correctly. Moonzer says, Alex, my cabin stateroom, I'm assuming you mean on Queen Mary, did not have a ceiling fan there. Used to be in that room, but I got removed. My room had 2 rooms combined with each 2... I think you meant to say punkalouvers. Bathroom did not have one. Okay. Oh, you got to go to the isolation ward? That's cool, because that's one of the places I want to send Chris to film for me, because I want to see, because I was in the isolation ward on the Queen Mary in 2020, and it was not in the best condition. It was really in need of repainting and new floors. So Yeah. What am I trying to say? So I wanted to see, after the ship reopened the isolation ward, if they've refurbished the isolation ward. So I'm actually kind of curious to see that. Where are we? Oh, yeah. So this is the chief steward's cabin. It's very dark in here. But he has a window out to the second class promenade, which is interesting. Oh yeah, RMS Queen Elizabeth had a barber shop for sure. I mean, she was almost identical to the Queen Mary in many aspects, and that was one of those aspects. They had the same amount of salons and barber shops aboard the Queen Elizabeth that they did aboard the Queen Mary. What room was that we entered? This was the restaurant manager's room. That was the one we were just in. This is the assistant doctor's room. So, almost identical to the other two. Is that, oh, I thought I saw a window on the right, but there isn't. Okay. And then if we go over here, we can actually see the doctor's room on the Titanic. So large ocean liners such as Titanic and Queen Mary even, they had not only physicians on board, but they also had hospitals. So we'll get to see that right now. But first, this is the doctor's cabin. It doubles as a doctor's office. So if you were aboard the ship and you needed to see a doctor about maybe a headache you've had for the last couple of days or something, you could come here and the doctor will assess you and, prescribe whatever might help you if he has it. But the curtain also separates his little living space. So, and as you saw, he had an assistant as well. So it doubled as a cabin and as a doctor's office. But if someone had a problem, like let's say they were in need of, let's say they broke their leg, they fell down some stairs or something, broke their leg, then they would be taken down here. There are various rooms here. Some of them are labeled attendant, so it could be like essentially nurses and things like that, but well, where is it? Oh, these aren't even labeled. But one of these rooms here, I don't know which one, would have been a surgical theater, which I don't expect it to be much. Probably like a clean room with a light, some cabinets with supplies, and of course, some kind of gurney or table or something for someone to lay in. Then they had various other stuff, but I can't speak much about Titanic. I can tell you all about Queen Mary's Hospital if you want, but I can't talk about Titanic's hospital. But one of the cool things about this area is if there was a very unruly passenger, maybe someone who was violent or crazy, they could be taken down here to the padded room. So this is exactly as it sounds. It is a padded room, a padded cell that the person will be put in for their safety and the safety of others. And it's padded so, if they try to like ram their head into the wall or something, it wouldn't hurt them as much. Or if the ship was rolling in really heavy seas, the padded room would be good for them as opposed to being locked in a stateroom cabin where they might fall on top of furniture and stuff like that. I don't know. But I'm just kind of spitballing here. But the padded room was for people who were very unruly. Yeah. So Doc says, Alex, I have missed you and tea times. Hope you're doing well. Think of you often. Oh, thank you so much, Doc. Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, like, you know, especially this, like, the last 7 days, we've had a really crazy heat wave, and it was just too hot to eat hot tea. And, you know, I didn't even have my computer on a lot of the times because the computer is just a heat pump. It just pumps heat into the room. But today is a slightly cooler day, so I was able to kind of... Oh, right, down this way is the other cabins. What am I trying to say? The Strauss suite. But before we go there, here's another room. Stateroom. It's got a double wide bed and a single wide bed. I heard that this trunk is it's a nod to the game Adventures Out of Time, which no, I will not play. I'm really not a gamer. I'm really not. I played this because it's fun to see Titanic. It's fun to see the architecture and stuff like that, but Moonzer says at Queen Mary you would see a lot of stewardess call buttons. Yeah, they're still, a lot of them are still there. Yeah, the Russian sub next to the Queen Mary looks really bad. Stephen R., thank you so much for the donation. Stephen says, your videos are amazing. Your work is amazing. I joined the Queen Mary Foundation because of your vids. Thanks for all you do for historic appreciation and preservation. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. That means a lot to me because, you know, like, I think a lot of people know my Queen Mary story by now, but essentially, you know, I grew up visiting the ship once in a while, not very often, but I never, as a child, I never really cared much about the ship. I was just kind of like, you know, whatever. But the last time I visited the ship was in January of 2020 with my friends. I didn't even, it's funny, I wasn't even that interested in going, but my friend Chris was just like, no, come on, you gotta go. And so I was like, all right, I'll go with you guys. So went to the Queen Mary, and I just fell in love with it. I had been there multiple times in my life, but never before then had anything really clicked like that. And I just fell in love with the ship. And I could see as I was walking around the Queen Mary, I was like, you know, there's all this stuff online about the neglect and all that. And I'm like, but underneath the dirt and grime was this beautiful ship with a really storied history, a very long history, and it's like a time capsule. And a lot of it, I mean, people often say like, oh, they got rid of everything on the Queen Mary. No, a lot of the Queen Mary is still there. Like, you know, like most of the rooms people want to see on the ship are still in existence. So, you know, it was a ship that I felt was very misunderstood by society. We're in the Strauss suite right now, by the way. But the Queen Mary was a ship that I felt was very misunderstood by people, especially locals. You know, and the story of the Queen Mary was scattered into bits and pieces. So some people knew it was a troop ship. Some people thought it was a cruise ship. Some people, you know, it's like bits and pieces just scattered everywhere. God, this room is beautiful. I love the almost reddish wood stain on the walls here. But yes, and then, you know, then COVID hit, and, you know, it was just amazing. I thought to myself, I'm like, it's crazy that I was able to see the Queen Mary before COVID. We had no idea at the time that COVID was going to happen. And then I would end up moving 1,000 miles away, so I'd never be able to visit the Queen Mary under, casual circumstances ever again. And so, it was just really lucky. And almost a year later, when there was all this talk, because once I heard that the previous operators of the ship were going bankrupt, and there was all these rumors of the ship going to be scrapped and stuff, but I was, and there were so many people online that were just like, oh, the ship is structurally unsafe, she's gonna collapse into herself, or she's gonna sink or capsize, or all this stuff. And I went and did my research. That's what I do. I research things. I did my research. I read through inspection reports dating all the way back to 1992, and there was no indication that the Queen Mary was structurally unsound. None at all. And in fact, one of the key things that people were saying was, oh, but, an inspector said that the ship was at risk, an inspector said the ship was going to capsize. But the inspector did not say that. The inspector said, at the time, if nothing is done, then the ship is at risk of capsizing in about 2 years or more. At risk of capsizing. But it doesn't mean that it was going to happen. So that was one of the key things, because when you're an engineer, a doctor, or an inspector of some kind, you want to lay out the possibilities, but you don't want to point directly at them because it might not be it. So, I just realized that there was a lot of misinformation about the Queen Mary. We are in the, well, that's the, purser's office right here, but back here we're in, I forget what this is called. Is it labeled on the door? No, it just says crew only. This is an office for, like, if you need to store valuables, like you got, I don't know, a necklace that you're afraid to leave in your cabin, they could put it in this safe here. Anyway, back to the Queen Mary. So I realized the ship needed a lot of help, and it needed someone with a voice to be able to, like, lay out the reality of what's happening to the ship. So that's when I started doing videos, not just about the history of the Queen Mary, but about the condition of the ship. I did updates on what was going to happen to the ship and all kinds of stuff. And slowly over the last 2 years, I've noticed the attitude towards the Queen Mary shifting more positively. Now that more people know more about the ship and know its importance and the reality of its situation, that it's not going to structurally collapse or anything like that. It does need help. It does need, a lot of stuff, but she's a very safe ship to walk around, and she's still very much original. So yeah, it just became something, I don't know, it was like a calling, to kind of try to straighten things out about the ship. And I'm still doing it to this day, I got involved with, with QMI Restore the Queen for a while. I was their public relations director, and but even longer than that, I was an advisor to the board, because I just wanted to help the ship. I wanted to see whatever it was I could do to help the Queen Mary. Because, once she's gone, she's gone. But the good news is that, all of this has paid off. The Queen Mary is undergoing restorations. It's very slow because it's not like some billionaire came in and was like, here's money, you know, restore the ship. It's going very slowly because it's just a city trying to scrounge up money where it can without having to spend taxpayer money. Because, believe it or not, a lot of taxpayers would not approve of taxpayer money being spent on the Queen Mary. So the city has been trying to get funding from private sources, and they've been lucky so far with that. And they recently made a deal where they will be able to infuse about $12 million into the Queen Mary. So that'll be the next step forward. That 12 million will go for other things they haven't yet gotten to. And that part is really exciting. What's down here? Oh, just more closed cabins. So I believe we're in first class spaces right now. Yeah, we're far forward on the ship. Another first class room. This is a big room when you think about it. Lots of space between this bed and that bed. Well, it could be about the same size as other rooms. It just looks really big. Probably because it's all white. And then that's the well deck in front of us, and then the forecastle above it. So all right, so I gotta scroll back up because I was missing a bunch of comments. Hey, K4RNA, how's it going? Moonzer, people who are put in the padded room were not done so just because of a reputation. They had to have committed some kind of act that would require them to go to the padded room. So yeah, just because you might have been crazy doesn't necessarily mean that you were automatically put in the padded room. You had to be of a danger to the passengers actively. But to my knowledge, I don't know of any stories from any ocean liners where someone had to be put in a padded cell. There's a completely, well, not completely, there's a mostly fake story on the Queen Mary of a person that had to be locked in a stateroom. And the story centers around the room B340. So this is where I'm going to pop one of those ghost bubbles on the Queen Mary, because the story goes that, oh, is this the gymnasium? Oh, that's the Promenade. I don't want to go out there yet. Oh, but here's one of the staircases. But the story goes on the Queen Mary that there was a passenger aboard the ship who went crazy and murdered his wife and children aboard the Queen Mary. And in the middle of the voyage, he was caught and he was locked in room B340 in order to keep him away from other passengers. And when they arrived at the port, authorities came aboard to arrest him. But when they opened the room, B340, they found the man completely dismembered. And it's such a silly story because that never happened aboard the ship. First of all, Cunard kept impeccable records of everybody that died aboard the Queen Mary, and people did die aboard the Queen Mary, but for natural causes, or sometimes from an accident, like slipping and falling down the stairs. But nothing from murder and stuff like that. But Anyway, we're heading to the first class main lounge right now. But what was I saying? So, no, there was no guy that was aboard the ship, murdered his family, and then dismembered himself. And he certainly wasn't locked in room B340 because room B340 didn't exist back then. It was like 2 or 3 third-class cabins at the time. Yeah, so, but there is a sliver of truth to the story in which there was an elderly woman who was on a voyage aboard the Queen Mary, and while she was on her voyage, her son or son-in-law, I don't remember, in somewhere in England, had murdered his family, and then killed himself. Not dismembered himself, but just killed himself. And the grandmother of that family was aboard the Queen Mary at the time that it happened. So that is the tiny little sliver of truth that it came from. But there was no murder aboard the ship. And the old woman, she got off the ship perfectly fine. So, yeah, it's one of those things where people take a real story and then embellish it. You know, they embellish it a lot. This is one of my favorite public spaces aboard the Titanic. This is the first class main lounge. It's just absolutely beautiful. I mean, I don't even have to tell you why. That's the thing about it, is it's so beautiful. You don't even have to say why it is. But one of the little details I like about this room is all the call buttons. So you see a little white button there for calling a steward to your area. So that way you don't have to shout over the crowd, because of course that would be ill-mannered to do that. Yeah. So let's see. Back to the comments. Oh boy, that's a lot of comments. I'm trying to like keep up with them, but that's... Okay, let's see. Next time you go... Mr. Golden V says the funnel color is wrong. On the Queen Mary, yes, the funnel color is wrong. It's not a mistake, though. It was done on purpose, because the Cunard orange that the Queen Mary wore in her service needed to be repainted constantly. It faded very quickly in sunlight, and when that particular orange fades in sunlight, it does not look good. It looks very bad. And so... in fact, she did wear a type of orange during the Disney years, and she basically, the funnels faded, and it looked so gross. It just looked really bad how faded the funnels got. So when they were repainting the ship's funnels, I think in 2018, 2019, they decided to use a red that's closer to the Cunard red that a lot of other Cunard ships wore on their funnels. And the reason why is because when a dark, or a deep, I should say, very vibrant red like that, when it fades in sunlight, it still looks relatively good. You almost can't tell until several years later that it's faded. And right now, it's what? The last time they did it was, let's just say the last funnel was painted in 2019. So it's been for almost 5 years, and you're barely starting to tell that the funnels are fading. At the forward funnel, it's almost unnoticeable, but it's noticeable now. But that's why they painted it red, is because it just looks a little bit better even when it's faded. So that's why they chose red. Otherwise, the orange would have had to be repainted every single year. In fact, the Queen Mary, when she was in service, her funnels were touched up at the end of every single voyage. I say touched up, but they were repainted fully about twice a year. All right, so back to the comments. Oof. Historic Production says, Alex, is it true that there's parts of RMS Olympic on the RMS Queen Mary? Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything. But there is a possibility that there are artifacts like what are they doing? It's possible that there were artifacts such as serving trays, cutlery, dinnerware. There were probably things from Olympic that were on Queen Mary for a while. I don't know if they're still there. But off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that is specifically from Olympic that is on the Queen Mary. I can't think of anything. Oh yeah, Veronica. I totally agree. It's really a shame that the Queen Mary is mainly known as just a very large haunted ship. It's really a shame because the story of the ship is so much more fascinating, so much more just multifaceted than just the simple ghost stories that are on the ship. Like the ship went through so much, saw so many historic events and things happen. You know, it's just incredible, the story of the Queen Mary. I remember the first time I ever researched the Queen Mary, it was the day before my last visit in 2020, and I was like, whoa, I didn't know all this stuff about the Queen Mary and all that. Like, I was like, wow, it was just really fantastic, you know, just some amazing stuff. What's really unfortunate is they're making this new movie. Well, it's going to be a new trilogy, but the first movie is about to come out this year, and it's just titled simply The Queen Mary, and it's a haunted movie, and they basically took all the famous stories of the ghosts on the Queen Mary and turned it into one movie that's supposed to make all the stories cohesive, because if you've ever taken a haunted tour of Queen Mary, which I have, none of the stories are cohesive because it's all separate ghosts and ghost stories. But this movie is trying to combine them into a cohesive story that makes sense. You know, I'm not going to knock the film director or the writers for wanting to do something that they're passionate about. But at the same time, I feel that the movie will only perpetuate the really poor treatment or attention, the poor attention especially, that the Queen Mary gets. I can't tell you how many people, like, imagine, folks, you own a business, right? It can be the Queen Mary. It can be a hotel, right? It can be just a business. Now imagine how you would feel if you heard all these people say, oh, I heard your business is haunted. I'm not going to stay there. You can't even get me into your business because it's so haunted. There are way more people saying those words about the Queen Mary than there are people who want to step aboard the ship to see the ghosts. I mean, I can't even tell you. I spoke to a family once. They were like, "Oh, we'd love to take our kids to the Queen Mary to see it because, you know, our whole family loves history. We love World War II, and we're learning about World War II. I should say they don't love World War II. They love learning about World War II and all that. But they're like, but, you know, our kids are just really frightened of ghosts. We don't want to traumatize them, anything like that. And you know, and the lady was like, and you know, she was like, and I don't want to be anywhere near ghosts. I'm like, I don't want to say the Queen Mary isn't haunted, because while I have never seen any evidence that the ship is haunted, at the same time, I've got a lot of friends who have had experiences here and there, maybe hearing voices, getting a pat on the shoulder, maybe they saw a door open and close, that kind of thing. But certainly not anything as gruesome as what some people describe they've seen aboard the ship. So I didn't want to tell the lady that the ship isn't haunted, but at the same time, it's kind of like, it's not that haunted. You shouldn't be worried about going there and seeing a ghost. I mean, you know, I've got so many friends who go to the Queen Mary and, you know, they don't have any crazy experiences like that. They've, you know, they still enjoy what they see. We're in a little galley here that serves both the first class smoking room and the veranda cafe. Oh, to whoever asked me if there's anything of Olympic on board the Queen Mary, this isn't necessarily that, but this little cafe here, which the Olympic did have as well, is called the Veranda Cafe, or just Veranda. Well, the Queen Mary has a private, or had, it's now just a museum space, but I mean, it's still there, but it's not used as a club anymore. But they had a private club, an exclusive lounge called the Veranda Grill. And I believe Veranda was kind of a name carried over from White Star Line, because at one point, you know, Cunard and White Star Line were merged, especially when Queen Mary was first launched. The two companies were one. So I believe they carried over the idea of having, you know, a beautiful eating space at the stern of the ship and calling it Veranda. So on Olympic, it's Veranda Cafe or just Veranda. And on Queen Mary, it is Veranda Grill. So, yeah. All right, we are at the sternmost section of the ship. You know, let's just go out. We'll take a walk on the promenade. Okay. Hello, Tyler. Let's see. Steven says, Queen Mary is now Queen Mother of Liners. That's kind of true, honestly. If you consider the Queen Mary as the former Queen of the Seas, or she still is, but retired, then yeah, she would be like the Queen Mother, you know. Because the current Queen is the Queen Mary too. Some people might say, well, Alex, there's also other queen ships. There's, you know, the new Queen Elizabeth, the new Queen Victoria, and then soon to be Queen Anne. But those are cruise ships. They're not ocean liners. They're not built the same. They don't act the same, and they don't offer the same things. So I don't really consider them queens of the sea. They're just cruise ships bearing the name. But the Queen Mary too is a true ocean liner. So yeah. Taking a little walk on the promenade. Slow Snail Studio says, started following you because of your update on Queen Mary's restoration. yeah, I planned. It's the idea is to try to do one update every 2 months. If I lived down in California, then I'd probably do an update every single month. But I don't, and I rely on my friend to go to the Queen Mary to do the filming for me. Now you might ask, why him? Why don't I get multiple people to do it? Because I have had some people offer to film for me, but one of the biggest reasons is I can be on a call with my friend Chris, and I can tell him exactly what I want him to film, and he can almost read my mind. We're just so well understood of each other that he can almost read my mind, and I can say, oh, I need you to film this area, and he'll know exactly where to point the camera. Whereas most people, I might have to sit there and describe, okay, film that. You know, if I say, oh, film the scupper at the bottom, they might go, what in the world is a scupper? You know, so Chris would know that, you know, or maybe, I don't know. But, you know, that kind of thing. So I don't know. I feel more comfortable having Chris do it, especially because Chris has like really nice, you know, professional cameras and stuff like that. And so I know I'm getting a good quality footage. I know what settings he's got the footage on. That's the other thing too, is I need the footage to be on certain settings and stuff like that. So but to kind of help him out, I went and invested in a Queen Mary annual pass. Now, this is important. If you love the Queen Mary and you want to support the Queen Mary's restoration, you can either buy merchandise on the ship, in which they've been introducing some pretty cool merchandise lately. I don't know if you guys remember this, but I was talking almost 2 years ago about how the ship really needs some solid merchandise. Because when I was on the ship, they sold things like postcards and keychains and snow globes. I'm like, this isn't the 1990s. I don't want this stuff. You know, I'm like, I want some solid merch. I want shirts. I want hats. I want, you know, shot glasses and you know, all kinds of stuff, you know. And finally, they are selling that stuff, and there's more to come. I heard that they've made a lot of business deals with other merchandise companies that will offer different stuff. So pretty exciting. This is a little ventilation room. You got your vent fans on either side, pushing air down into the ship. Okay, so let me just get back into... You know what? This will probably make it faster if I just go all the way over here and skip the main lounge. Oh, I can't go in there. Okay. Let's try over here. Yeah, here's a door. I know I can go in this one. Alright, so, let's see. Chris says the Battleship New Jersey will be heading to dry dock. Awesome. Stephen asks, Queen Mary is the last of the greats? That depends on who you ask. If you ask me, yes. But there are some people who really love the SS United States and will claim that the SS United States is the last of the greats. Then there are some people who are fans of, like, the Rotterdam and stuff like that, and they'll say that the Rotterdam is the last of the greats. It depends on who you ask. Ozzy says, how's your weather today? It's hot. We're at the tail end of a really, really bad heat wave that was just absolutely terrible. And it's like the first day I've been able to actually do a live stream because it's not so hot that it's impossible, you know. Here's the top of the lifts. These are the 3 lift mechanisms. Okay, I'm gonna go down. So Steven donated $5. Is it possible to get Queen Mary added to the National Registry of Historic Places, or on the UNESCO World Heritage Sites, 100 years coming up. The Queen Mary is already on the list of national. Is she she's one of two things. She's either on the list of historic national historic landmarks or national historic places. Because those are two different lists. But she's on one of those, and I don't remember off the top of my head which one it is. But she is registered as one of those things. But to be a UNESCO World Heritage Site, I believe there's some really strict guidelines for that. I don't know that a ship can be considered a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Though, if you ask my opinion, Queen Mary is a World Heritage Site, for sure. It's just that I don't know if you can call a ship a World Heritage Site. Here is the Marconi wireless room. Mr. Golden says this would be astonishing in VR. Yes, this whole game will one day be available in VR. But that will be determined in the future because it's hard to do. It's hard to do. So this is the room where the two Marconi wireless operators slept. This is the room which generated the power and the frequency for sending the telegraph messages through radio, I think it was. Radio waves. I know, right? Ella says, how about we get those call buttons for restaurants and cafes? Because I hate yelling. Yeah, I agree. I'm like, whatever happened to call buttons? You know, like that would have made things so much easier when you're at a restaurant. You know, I mean, I was a server once, and I know how frustrating it might be to like look at a board constantly, and there's like everybody's lighting up their tables. I think that's probably why they got rid of it, is because when you're short-staffed at a restaurant. Because when you think about it, restaurants today are nothing like they were in the 1910s, 20s, 30s. In those days, a restaurant, like an actual restaurant, would have been full of staff, just chocked full of them. So if someone, you know, required assistance, you know, if the restaurant had a call button, not all of them did, but some did, you would have someone to serve them. But in today's society, restaurants are actually very understaffed compared to how they used to be. And yeah, it would be difficult to keep up with all those call buttons. I was even talking to people about kitchens. Restaurant kitchens have gotten smaller in order to adapt. You know, in the past, a restaurant kitchen would have been set up under the brigade system, which was set up by Escoffier. The brigade system was a series of parts of the kitchen that focused on very specific things. You had a saucier for sauces, you had a boulanger for breads, you had a area for pastries, you had you know, a grill for meats, you had all kinds, like, separate areas. But most restaurants, even fancy ones today, don't have that much space to work with. and they would prefer to use most of the space in the restaurant for the guests. Fill as many tables as possible. You earn more money that way, which means a smaller kitchen, which means possibly a lower quality food that you might get, because nobody specializes in anything. They just all kind of do each other's jobs. All right, so Chris says, I could easily live on board an Olympic class ocean liner just like RMS Britannic too. Okay, let's go down to the engine rooms. I'm reading people's comments, but I'm not sure that there's really any I can... Chris says, hey Alex, would it be possible to go to Captain Smith's cabin? I don't know where it is, and I don't think it's open. So even if someone were to tell me how to get there, it would just be a closed door. Historic Ship says, does anyone else think that the Olympic class was very colorful on the interior and the exterior? Well, I can see how you might think the interior is very colorful. I mean, look at this right now. You got red carpets, you got the green wicker chairs, and, you know, a white ceiling and stuff. But I mean, I'm trying not to be biased, but I think that Queen Mary was much more colorful than, you know, Titanic. Titanic is colorful, though. That's for sure. That's not... I can't deny that. Titanic was colorful. But there were more colorful ships. Here we are. This is the way to Scotland Road. K4RNA says, why is the Marconi wireless room cabin so small? I mean, I don't know. I guess it wasn't a very glamorous job, I don't think. Here's a steward's dormitory, I guess you would call it. Diogo says, Alex, do you know what spaces are left to be seen on here on the game? A lot. I mean, I can't really name them all. Oh, Mike, that's really strange. Well, I know YouTube has been kind of acting weird for me as well. They are updating some things. They're updating some things on the website and on the app. Like, I logged into the app the other day and I was like, why does my menu look different? Is this the... Oh, it's a drying room. You know what? Let's go to the engine rooms first. Not the boiler rooms. The boiler rooms are okay, but the engine rooms are more interesting. Oh, I see. Where the captain's cabin is. Yeah. Oh, that's alright, Chris. I don't mind. You know, things happen. People are busy or something happens. So we are now in the... I guess you would call it the main engine room on Titanic, because it wouldn't technically be called the forward engine room. This is one of the coolest spaces on the ship, let me tell you. I mean, I love machines, especially steam-powered machines. And, man, this is so cool. Oh, wow, K4Arna, you're almost at your 1-year anniversary. I wonder if I have... I think I did. I think I have a... an image for being being a member for 1 year. I'll have to check and make sure, because the last thing I'd want is for you to reach 1 year and then there's no image to go along with it. Pretty sure I have one. So that's the ventilation shaft going all the way up to the top of the ship. You want to know something cool about Queen Mary is, so the engine rooms on the Queen Mary also had these ventilation shafts. They went all the way up to the top of the ship to vent. But you may have noticed, if you've ever looked on Google, that you don't see them. You're like, where are they? I don't see these, because here on Titanic, it's a big glass open skylight, right? There isn't on the Queen Mary. And the reason why is because after the engine rooms on the Queen Mary were enclosed and one of them was gutted, the other one was preserved, they realized that they didn't need air shafts anymore, and they could actually deck them over on every level to add more space to the ship. But what they did at the very top was they took the hatch of cargo hatch 2 on the Queen Mary, and then they covered over one of the engine room shafts. And that's what they did with it. So if you look on Google Maps today, you will see a large hatch just sitting on the top of the ship somewhere. Just, I would say it's just forward of Veranda Grill, but just aft of the third funnel. Ozzy says, how many boiler rooms did the Queen Mary have? She had 5 boiler rooms. So, I mean, boiler room 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that right? I have a cutaway image on my wall. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, she had 5 boiler rooms. One of those boiler rooms is a Scotch boiler room, and that was for generating steam for the passenger services, the kitchen services, and other appliances and power generation on the ship. So that's what they used that for. Young Euphorium, hello. You're cool. One of my favorite channels. Oh, thanks so much. It's so nice when people say that. I feel so good. I feel like I'm doing something right, you know? When people are like, oh, I love your channel, I'm like, okay, I'm doing something right then. I'm not, like, messing up or anything. You know? I always worry about that. Little Gamer says, almost halfway there to 100K. I know. I think with the video that I'm going to post tomorrow, which, by the way, folks, just a reminder, the video that I'm posting tomorrow will be posted literally this time tomorrow. And you should get a notification, but if you don't, just be sure to look out for it. I don't want to give away the details, but it's about steamboats, like the paddle wheel boats, and a story about a place that at one point was burning them. And it's a pretty interesting little story. I mean, it's not like, ooh, ah, you know, like crazy, scary, or fascinating, but it is a pretty interesting story. The history of the place. But anyway, yeah, you guys will love it, I think. Yeah. And I'm thinking once that video publishes, I think it might be a pretty popular video. Who doesn't want to know about burning steamboats? Oh, I can only... Sometimes I forget where I can walk and where I can't walk. Yeah, and so I think that video, once it posts, that might give me the subscriber boost I need to reach 50,000. And boy, that's a big milestone for me. I mean, my brother-in-law was telling me the other day, he goes, Alex, do you realize that when we moved up here to Portland, he's like, you had like 16,000 subscribers. He's like, but you've gone from like 16,000 to almost 50,000. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's crazy. But it's great. It means that I'm creating stuff that people want to see, which has been my biggest concern from day one, was that I want to make stuff that people want to see. So, this is so cool, the animation of these engines. Yeah, 26, 36,000. Yeah, when I was at, like... See, I remember there was a time where I told myself, I'm like, okay, if I can surpass, you know, I think I told myself 40,000 subscribers. I don't know why that number, but I told myself if I can surpass 40,000 subscribers, then, you know, then everything I've done will feel more legitimate to me. It'll feel more like, okay, I'm not just some, you know, person just rambling on and on about, you know, ships and Disneyland and whatever. You know, I'll feel more, I don't know, more serious, more taken seriously. And that's really all I want, is to be taken seriously. But, you know, 40,000 came and went, and now I'm on my way to 50,000. And it feels great, you know, like, it feels like, I mean, again, like, I'm making stuff that people want to see. So, Slow Snail Studio says, you found your niche and you're, oh, I can't see because YouTube puts that thing there. Filling it. Yes, definitely. Well, that's the other funny thing, too, is one aspect I have noticed is that I have to change things up every once in a while. If I make too many Queen Mary videos, then eventually I put out a Queen Mary video and like hardly anyone watches it. I noticed that. And then if I make too many ocean liner videos in general, people start to get tired of that and then they stop watching. And, you know, that kind of happened with my Mauritania video, sort of. It was still a pretty popular video, but so I've learned over time, like, I have to change things up. It can't just be ocean liners. It can't just be Queen Mary. So, hence, you know, one of the videos, to, you know, being tomorrow's video, which is about steamboats. And then the video after the steamboat video will be about a steam locomotive, a train, essentially. All right, to the other engine room. This is the aft engine room, which contains the, what do you call it? The turbine engine, and also contains the thrust blocks to the various propeller shafts. The thrust blocks are interesting. That's not it. Where is... Oh, that's one of them right there. So that's a propeller shaft running off down that way. You can kind of see, and it comes down this way. And that thing with the ribs, it kind of looks like a vertebra, is that is a thrust block. And what that does is, if you think about it this way, the engines put out a certain amount of force to the water, and the whole ship is, the engines are bolted to the ship, and that helps the ship move, right? But the thing is that if the only thing that attaches the propellers to the ship was the engine, then that can create issues for the ship, particularly in rough weather, that kind of thing, because the constant like thrust of the propellers or the movement of the ocean can really shake the engines loose from their bolts and their mounting. And to prevent that kind of maintenance issue from happening, they have these thrust blocks. And what they are is it's basically an interchange. You got a propeller shaft going in one end, and then it's separated from a separate propeller shaft that goes out the other end. And they're bolted together in such a way that the shaft will turn together, but there is space between the two pieces, so that way if there is a sudden force that is pushing up against the propeller, that force won't reach its way all the way to the engines and wear out the engines over time. So that's what thrust blocks were for. And it was particularly useful if, let's say, you've thrown a propeller blade, right? And the propeller starts vibrating because it's missing one blade. That could damage the engines of the ship. So one of the ways that the thrust block prevents that is it kind of acts like a buffer and smooths that vibration, so it doesn't completely damage the engines. Yeah, so thrust blocks were very important for ocean liners. Chris says, hey Alex, 50,000 subscribers is half of the population of Columbia, Missouri. Columbia, Missouri has about 120,000 people in population. Keep up the great work. Thank you so much, Chris. Yeah, I have there's a basketball stadium near me. What's it called? MODA. It's called MODA, M-O-D-A. And that fits about 20,000 people. So I've got enough subscribers that I could fill that stadium 2.5 times with my subscribers, which is just wild, just absolutely wild to me. 50,000 subscribers is also equal to the capacity that Disney's California Adventure theme park had back in 2012. Back in 2012, we had a maximum capacity of 55,000 guests back then at the California Adventure theme park. But we considered it maximum busy at just 50,000 because honestly, the park systems couldn't handle that many people. So yeah, it is crazy to think, like, you know, with the amount of subscribers I have, I could fill a stadium 2.5 times, or I could completely fill up a theme park. It's just crazy. Slow Snail Studio says, I think you meant to say Maury vid, because about Mauritania. Everyone talks about Lucy, and the other sister is forgotten. As a history nerd, it makes me sad. Yeah, I mean, you know, there are a few videos here and there that talk about Mauritania, but not nearly as many that talk about Lusitania. You know, Lusitania, I think people are attracted to tragic events. And so I think that a lot of people, they make videos about Lusitania because it's a ship that sank, you know. One of the things, I was talking to my friend Steve Ablonzi one time. This was like a couple of years back, when around when I first met him. And we were talking about the Queen Mary and how at the time, I mean, things are different now, but at the time, the Queen Mary was not a very popular ship. Not many people knew about the Queen Mary anymore, I should say. It was just losing its popularity very quickly, especially over COVID, because it was no longer in the limelight in a positive way. And the point is that we were talking, and I said, what has happened to the Queen Mary? I said, what's so wrong with it? Why is it not a popular ship? And he just looked at me and he said, honestly, he goes, it's because the Queen Mary didn't sink. And I was like, that is one of the truest statements I ever heard. That one of the biggest reasons why the Queen Mary is not that popular of a ship is because she didn't sink. And, you know, it's sad. You know, you'd think that a ship that is still around with so much history to it would be more popular than a ship that, you know, that sank, essentially. But that's not how the world works. People really focus on tragedy. And so Titanic, Lusitania, Carpathia, all those kinds of ships, they get a lot more press, a lot more interest because they sank. And it's also how they sank, in what ways, you know, how much tragedy was involved in the sinking, all that kind of stuff. So, but it was shocking just to hear Steve say that. Just, you know, the reason why is because she didn't sink. So, yeah. Sad. Ozzy says, the new video you did, Alex, was awesome. Well done. Thank you so much, Ozzy. Yeah, I actually extended the video. So the one you saw yesterday, Ozzy, it was crazy. I finished the video. That's the one that's coming out tomorrow. I finished it and then had the paying channel members, I let them watch it first before it comes out tomorrow. And then right as I released that video for the members to see, I discovered a new fun fact about the subject I was covering. And I was like, oh, this fun fact, it really should be in the video because it's interesting, you know? And so I actually went back and added extra narration to cover that part. and then I added more images to the video. So the video is now 15 seconds longer than it was yesterday. And you guys will see the extended version of the video when it publishes tomorrow at 2 p.m. Pacific time, which is basically this time tomorrow. Boy, you know, Titanic can really be a maze when you think about it. I mean, Queen Mary could be a maze in certain areas, especially in third-class areas. There were spots where it was all twisty and turny, just like that, and but not that many places, to be honest. But Titanic, you go to all these second and third-class spaces, and it's like a giant maze. I think I already walked down here. Ella says, I've been interested in Titanic for a long time, and after Titanic, other ships followed. Before I found your channel, Queen Mary was just a ship among others. Now, thanks to you, she's one of my favorites. Oh, awesome. I'm really glad because, you know, like, that's exactly what I set out to do. I was like, I want people to know more about this amazing ship, you know, that really deserves to get some attention, you know? And so it makes me so happy when people say like, oh, my Queen Mary is now my favorite ship, and you know, because it's a wonderful ship, you know. It just, I've had people on my channel that they like, I have a video called Titanic versus Queen Mary, or is it Queen Mary versus Titanic? And it's a video that compares and contrasts the various facts about the two ships. You know, the interiors, the exteriors, the propulsion system, the career. So, and I thought it was a good video, and it was just meant to show people what changed in the 24 years between Titanic and Queen Mary. You know, what was different. And but the thing is that there were a lot of Titanic fans at first who found the video and immediately just ripped on Queen Mary. It was just like, no, Queen Mary's ugly and blah, 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 and Titanic was way more beautiful. And I'm like, you know, this isn't a competition. It's just a video to show people about the changes that happen over 2 decades of time. And, you know, and so it was one of those things that made me not want to talk about Titanic anymore because of those specific people that just feel like Titanic is, you know, the god among ocean liners. And, you know, Titanic is beautiful. I'm looking at all this as I explore it virtually. It's a beautiful ship, but it's not the most beautiful ship. I would say Normandy is prettier than this ship, and even then, I don't consider Normandy one of my favorite ships at all. You know, so that's just the thing, is that there's sometimes a certain amount of arrogance in the ocean liner community where people insist that Titanic is the end-all be-all of the greatest ocean liners ever. And I just don't see it that way, you know? But, yeah. Derpy, yeah, you got that right. Tragedy sells. Completely forgot where I heard that, but it's true. Yeah, tragedy sells. Derpy says, when Project 401 is finalized, do you think you'd ever stream it in VR? I don't see the point in like, you mean live streaming it to my channel? I don't see the point, because YouTube YouTube doesn't do VR, so it's not like you can see what I'm seeing the way I see it. To you, it would be a flat two-dimensional thing on the screen. So I don't think you'd be able to see it. Yeah, I think two-dimensional, the way that we're doing now, is really the only way I can feasibly put it on YouTube. So, but even if that were possible, my computer wouldn't be able to handle it. You know, I can play VR on my computer, but I cannot play and stream VR on my computer. I can stream two-dimensionally, which I have done in the past. Because sometimes me and my friend Chris, we used to like try out different games in VR. I mean, to me it was like novelty. It wasn't like, it's not like I constantly play VR. I think the last time I ever used my VR headset was probably like, oh dear God, it was almost a year ago. The last time I used my VR headset. Jeez, I can't believe it's been that long. But yeah, you know, and so sometimes he wanted to see what I was seeing, so I would stream it to him on Discord, so that way he could see what I was looking at. But it streamed two-dimensionally. Oh, I see what you mean. The point would be to watch someone struggling to get the hang of VR. Okay, I see. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've played VR so much now that I'm kind of used to it. So I'd probably just be walking around with it like this. But I mean, I do, if it does come out in VR, then I do want to see it in VR. Because VR is definitely better than seeing it on this flat computer screen, you know? It'll feel more real. Max says, my favorite ocean liner is Queen Mary because of Alex. I have learned so much from your channel. Keep up the great work. Oh, thank you so much. I feel accomplished. I feel like I did something. I helped the Queen Mary. Every time someone says the Queen Mary is my favorite ship because of your channel, I'm like, I did something. I helped the Queen Mary in some way. Like, that's what I set out to do. I was like, I need to help the Queen Mary. I'm really, the only way I can help the Queen Mary is using my YouTube channel to help the ship. And seeing it work out is just a really great reward, you know? And, you know, it's really crazy. Just side note, every time my friends, like any one of my friends, go to the Queen Mary now, and they show me, sometimes sometimes they live stream onto their own YouTube channels. Sometimes they will do a video call with me on Discord while they're there. And every time so far, it's been busy. There's been so many people on the Queen Mary. It was never like that in the past. I mean, maybe in the 80s, but you know, in the 2010s, when I would go to the Queen Mary sometimes, it was a ghost town. There was nobody there. But now you look at videos and stuff like that. I mean, just look at my friend Steve's channel, the Blue Ribbon Productions. If you go to his channel, he's done a few live streams aboard the Queen Mary. And you just see so many people there. And it almost brought me to tears. I'm not even kidding. I know it sounds like I'm being over dramatic, but when you fall in love with a ship like the Queen Mary, and you hear nothing but negative stuff like, oh, it's going to be scrapped and blah, 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 and you think about all the history that's going to be lost, all the history that never really got a chance to be appreciated by the general it becomes very emotional when you see the Queen Mary so busy, because people are finally loving and enjoying this historic ship the way it was meant to be, you know? And so I'm just so glad. I'm so glad to see the ship just bustling with people, just tons of people there. I mean, it really just, you know, even my friend Steve, when he was there, he was like, I can't believe it. He's like, it's been so long. He's like, since I've seen the ship this busy. He was just completely shocked, but at the same time, just so elated, so happy to see it that way. And yeah, it's just incredible. Let's see. Derpy, you know, I was talking a little bit about that film, the new Queen Mary thriller film, but I don't know. I don't like to say negative things, you know, because I'm sure that film was somebody's passion project. You know, I'm sure that somebody was like, oh, I can't wait till my film is done and people all over the world can see this scary movie I made. And I don't want to like trash a film, but essentially I will not go and see that film. It's not something I would watch, first of all. By the way, we are in the second class smoking room right now. But it's not the kind of film I would watch. Especially because it's not at all based on any truth. Like I said, you know, almost an hour ago, most of the ghost stories that will be told in the film are not real. They were made up by Disney, you know, in 1989 when Disney took over. You know, we've talked about this so much on my channel. I'm sure at some point the guy Malibu will show up and he'll be like, "Oh my God, we're talking about ghosts again." But you know, Disney took over the ship, not ownership, just leasing it in 1989, and at the time, the ship was slowly gaining a bad reputation for the poor quality of its hotel, because after Jack Rather died, his company, which was still operating the ship, was just not doing a good job at it anymore. And so when Disney took over the ship from Jack Rather Corporation, Disney was like, all right, well, we could spend hundreds of millions to refurbish the ship and get it repaired and back into a beautiful looking order. It says, so we could do that, or we'll just use its neglectedness as a great way to turn it into a haunted house, you know? And so Disney did do certain things. They did repaint certain areas of the ship, but essentially what they did was, it was just a paint and polish. They didn't actually restore much of anything. And then what they did was, to save money, they were like, you know what, we'll just, everything that's neglected, we'll just call it a haunted space, you know? And so they really pushed the haunted factor. They wanted some stories to be able to tell on haunted tours. So they sent scouts all over the ship to ask crew members at the time. They're like, do you have any stories of seeing ghosts? And anybody who even said something, they're like, you know, there were the story of the lady in white originated from a housekeeper who was walking through the ship, and she thought she saw someone wearing white in the corner of her eye. That's where it began. What Disney did was they took it and they embellished it, and they said, oh, it's the lady in white and people see her everywhere and she does this, this, and that. And it's like, no, that's not what the original story said. That's just what Disney put in. And so that's one of those things where I'm kind of like, this movie is going to perpetuate that thing. And that kind of people love ghost stories, even if they don't believe in ghosts. And once again, this movie is going to make it so the Queen Mary's real history, the actual more fascinating stuff about the ship that is more interesting than ghosts, will once again be sidelined for the sake of some blood, gore, and demons. And it's sad, you know, it's just really sad. So yeah, I will not be watching that movie out of a matter of principle. So yeah. Chris says, hey, Alex, I would love to visit RMS Queen Mary, but I live in Moberly, Missouri. I live way too far from it. Well, you know, the best that, you know, you can do is... See, this is why why I want to do an annual video of a virtual tour of the Queen Mary. Because I want people to be able to watch the video, even if they live somewhere and maybe, you know, there was a really just a story that really tugged at my heartstrings. There was an elderly gentleman who watched my Queen Mary virtual tour video, which is on my channel. It was posted, I think, in 2021, but it's still front page on my channel. And it was a virtual tour of the ship like nobody has seen it before, right? Most people post like just very brief walk around videos, but nothing really like what I did. And this man emailed me and he was like, I saw your video and I just wanted to thank you so much. He said that, you know, he lived very, very far from the Queen Mary. He's wanted to go his whole life to see the Queen Mary, but now he was elderly, unable to travel. Just essentially he'll never ever be able to see the ship with his own eyes. And YouTube videos were often dissatisfying because they were either too brief, they didn't show enough of the ship, they didn't explain much of anything. So when he saw my video and how it really went into detail about what you were looking at on the ship and being able to see all these spaces that maybe were not always visible, it really made him happy. He was like, I felt like I was there walking through the ship with you. So that immediately, you know, I got a lot of stories like that, not just from him. And I realized I'm like, I have to make this a thing. I have to, if not annually, then maybe once every 2 years. You know, but yeah, ever since I posted that virtual tour video, it's, you know, people loved it, and now I want to redo it with brand new footage of the way the ship looks now after the refurbishment work has been done. You know, there's been lots of restoration going on. The ship looks a lot more beautiful and clean and polished than she did before. And I want to make a new tour video. So when my friend Chris is available to go to the Queen Mary, I'm going to have him do a little bit more filming for me because I have a lot of footage already to use, but I just need a little bit more. And then I'll make another video, a virtual tour. So, Veronica says, agreed, Alex. The Queen Mary movie is only going to attract more ghost hunters. It would have made more sense to make a war movie instead about the Queen Mary. Oh, I agree. I mean, people love war movies. People really do. And the Queen Mary would make a really good war movie, especially. But you see, one of the reasons why I think it hasn't been done yet is because a lot of the facts about Queen Mary's wartime have been scattered to the wind. If you watch my recent video called Queen Mary at War, it's on my channel, posted it actually a whole month back. But it is supposed to be what I would consider a definitive story of the entirety of Queen Mary's career in the war, her service in the war. And there are stories in there that are not told in other people's videos or books. Because, like I said, a lot of these fun facts have been scattered to the wind. Most everybody knows the Queen Mary was a troop ship, but not many people know that the Queen Mary was the direct reason why the first battle at El Alamein was won. The Queen Mary was directly involved with that. You know, people know that the Queen Mary, hit the HMS Curacao, but they don't know that the Queen Mary was also the lead ship in Operation Bolero, the operation that brought 2 million soldiers to the European theater in a short amount of time to overwhelm the Axis forces. You know, people, they might know that that the Queen Mary hit a rogue wave during the war, but they don't know that the Queen Mary was the planning of the Normandy battles, the storming of the beaches of Normandy was planned on board the Queen Mary, and then the plan to offload supplies onto the beaches of Normandy was planned in one of the stateroom bathtubs on the Queen Mary. So there's a lot of stories that people hear, and they hear it really often, but then there are even cooler stories that nobody's heard, you know? Like the fact that, like a lot of people go, oh, Queen Mary, she could outrun submarines, but she was never around a single submarine. That's not true. There was a story where she was quickly bolting out of New York Harbor, and as she went on her port side, I think it was, there was a U-boat waiting for her. She darted right past it, and they reported the U-boat to Navy pilot Raymond Rhodes, and so he confirmed that. But yeah, you know, so there's a lot of stuff that people don't know about the Queen Mary's war service, and I think it would make an excellent movie, honestly. I really do. So yeah. K4RNA says, another thing that bugs me on Titanic Honor and Glory is that the ship should be moving since the engines are turning. Yeah. That's true. Well, I think in the versions of the game that will be coming out from now on, it will be moving, I think. Liam says, I'm not a fan of haunted experiences on historic ships. A few months back, I visited the USS Lexington. Like, whom do you expect to meet on a ghost tour of the Lexington? A kamikaze pilot who died? I know, right? That's one of those weird things. Where should we go, you guys? I feel like we've been all over the ship, but where should we go next? Yeah, I mean, and the Queen Mary has so many crazy out of this world ghost stories, and I'm like, that's not real. There are people who believe it. Like, how do you believe that? Like the story of a former crew member who, like,
he was a ghost, right? He bothered this couple who were sleeping in their room to the point where he was actually like fist fighting the man who was staying in the room. And the man, the ghost came back 3 times in the night to bother them. And the man didn't once go down to the front desk and say, hey, there's a burglar in my room, or call 911 and say, hey, I'm being assaulted by somebody in my room. None of that. And then they go to the front desk finally after being assaulted 3 times by a ghost. And the person at the front desk supposedly says, oh yeah, that's just a ghost of a crew member. It's like, no, nobody in their right mind would do that. If I worked at a hotel, even if I knew the hotel was haunted, and somebody said I was just literally in a fist fight with somebody in my hotel room, the first thing I would do is pick up the phone and call the police. I would not immediately go, oh, that's probably one of our ghosts. Like, no. What? Who does that? You know, like, it's such a fake story. And that story was based, once again, off of a slither of truth. They say that the ghost who attacked the man, was the ghost of a crew member who accidentally poisoned himself to death. That's the sliver of truth. There was a first officer aboard the Queen Mary who mistook a bottle of cleaning liquid for his bottle of alcohol. And he drank the cleaning liquid, and he realized it soon after. He realized it when he did it. He realized it when he did it. And a crew member told him, you should go see the ship's doctor, get your stomach pumped. But the guy was like, no, I'll be fine. And then later on, he died. That was a true story, but he did not come back as a ghost. So, yeah. Let's see. All right. Hey there, Sam. How's it going? Good to see you. Sam says, well, Bill Sauter had a pretty crazy ghost encounter when he worked on the ship. He talked about it in a video he did with Titanic Honor and Glory. Honestly, I believe him. That being said, I think most ghost stories aren't real. Yeah, so here's my opinion. I've heard Bill Sauter's story. Here's my take on it. I do believe the Queen Mary is haunted. I don't believe she's haunted to the extent that we hear on the tours. But I do believe that people experience hearing voices, getting tapped on the shoulder, maybe seeing something off the corner of their eye. When it comes to Bill Sauter's story, and for those who are wondering what is Bill Sauter's story, to overly simplify his story, basically he said that he was locking up the first class swimming pool, because he was a tour guide at one point on the ship, and he was locking up the first class swimming pool, and all of a sudden he got really brief flashes of being on the ship at various areas and in various points in time in history. And it was so brief, and it was over before it even happened, or before it even really, And then I think in the same room, he also had another experience where he thought he saw a woman who was dressed like a hippie walking up the stairs of the swimming pool. The swimming pool had stairs just like this, actually, here on Titanic. There was 2 staircases that went down like this, and then there was a mirrored set that went down the opposite way on both sides. And he thought he saw her walking up, and he thought, that's weird that she's dressed like a hippie, like this is, the 80s or whatever, and people don't really dress like that anymore. And then she disappeared. Okay, do I think he saw a woman dressed as a hippie going up the stairs? I think it's possible he might have seen a woman coming up the stairs, and it might have been a ghost. Dressed as a hippie? I don't think so. I don't think so. because it doesn't make sense. First of all, no hippie had the money to sail aboard the Queen Mary. And even if they did, they wouldn't have been in the first class pool room dressed like that. They would have been dressed in proper attire. You know, there was a dress code aboard the Queen Mary. So even if she was walking towards the dressing rooms, you know, still hippie clothing would not have been allowed on the Queen Mary. There were dress codes. So the ghost could not have come from the Queen Mary itself. And I personally do not believe that ghosts can go from one place where they died to a completely other place on the planet. I don't personally believe that they can do that. It doesn't make sense to me. I believe that they can haunt a place that was most meaningful to them and a place where they died. But I don't believe that they can just travel. So I don't know. That's just my take on it. But Sam says, why would he lie about that? I don't think he lied about it. I think what happened was when he saw the girl, he thought he saw her dressed in hippie attire, but she probably was dressed in something different. She probably was dressed in, you know, some kind of colors reminiscent of what hippies wore, but it was probably more of something more in line with what Cunard passengers would have worn. You know, a lot of times, okay, for instance, there are ghosts that people say like, oh, it was a woman or a girl in a white dress. You hear that a lot in all kinds of haunted places. You look at tons of haunted places all over the US, and a lot of those places have a story of a lady or a girl in white. And the reason why people think they see that may not necessarily be because the person who died was wearing white. It was probably either one, it could be that she's a ghost, so maybe she was appearing in a more dulled colors and her dress appeared white, or two, it was probably a faded blue, faded green, some kind of faded color that the person seeing it mistook it for white. So it would be an incredible coincidence if all over the world people were seeing ladies in white. It's just weird. It had to have been, if it was a real ghost, then it had to have been an anomaly of the ghost being unable to appear in any other color other than white. Or something like that. But I don't believe that there was a ghost of a hippie in the pool room. If he saw a ghost, it probably wasn't a hippie. That's all I'm saying. So that's all I know. Stork Travel says, I believe he saw something, you know, could have been a passenger that was dressed like that earlier in life. Well, he said specifically she was dressed like a hippie. And the thing is that the Queen Mary retired in 1967. So either it was the ghost of a hippie who was on the ship, which due to Cunard's strict dress code, I don't think she would have been dressed like that. Is it possible she dressed like that outside of the Cunard ship? Well, yes, that's true. I guess she could have. I don't know. I don't know. I guess. I don't know. I hadn't really considered that part before, that maybe she had dressed outside the ship in hippie wear, but I don't know. I guess anything's possible. I don't know. I've seen ghosts before, but I've seen ghosts only twice in my life. I've seen evidence of ghosts more than that, but I've seen ghosts only twice in my life. One was when I worked at Disneyland, and the other one was at an apartment I used to live at a couple of years back. And the one at Disneyland, the girl was wearing like a blue dress, And then the one at the apartment, the guy was all black with a completely shaded face, like he was in darkness. And there was no color to speak of, you know. When me and my coworker saw that girl in the blue dress, my coworker recalled the girl wearing white. And I said that the girl was wearing blue. I saw blue. So that's one of those reasons why I go, like, I think people think they see things. Like, when they see a ghost, but then they think they see a ghost wearing something else. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the girl was wearing white, but for some reason I mistook it for blue. I don't know. But I don't know. It's just one of those weird anomalies. So, let's see. Ron says, what's up with these rave shows at the Queen Mary? Another one in November. There's an after party in the Dome where the Spruce Goose was shown at. It's not like it's like a thing that's happening now on. They were just special events that happened around the ship. You see, one of the ways that they're able to earn money for the Queen Mary is to use the Queen Mary as a backdrop for some kind of concert or event. And so they do that a lot throughout the year. And so it's not like you're going to go there and you're going to always see raves happening outside. It happened, like, I think over the course of less than a week. And then you probably won't see it again till the next year. So, but yeah, they use the Queen Mary as a backdrop for special events. All right, so let's go. K4RNA. So my computer has both. So my computer, the C drive, the main drive, is a solid state drive. My friend recommended I install that because the computer will run faster, and it certainly does. It certainly runs faster. So I have a solid state drive as my C drive, but then my other drives are hard drives. I would love if I could buy, like, you know, a 6 or 10 terabyte solid state drive. I would love if I could do that, but they don't sell those. So, yeah. Chris says, or wait, hold on, Steve. Oh, Steve joined. Steve R joined the joined membership. Well, thank you for joining. Steve R says, interesting, this is a Titanic video, but all comments and questions are Queen Mary. This says a lot. It really does, doesn't it? Like, we're all talking about Queen Mary, and yet we're on Titanic right now. Where should we go? I feel like you know what? Let's go to the boiler rooms. Yeah, so, but yeah, thank you for joining. Let's see. Oh, by the way, Steve, since now that you're a member, you can actually watch the video that I'm posting tomorrow. You can watch that right now as a member. So if you go to the community tab on my page, you will see a post with a link to the video. And then that video comes out tomorrow. But you can see it today. What was I going to say? Okay, so Chris Surface says, I don't believe in ghosts because I've never seen or felt anything like that. So yeah, I was similar. Before I worked at Disneyland, I never believed in ghosts. I did occasionally think I felt something strange, but I never really was fully convinced it was a ghost. And then when I worked at Disneyland, I worked in some of the most haunted places in that park. One of them was the Golden Horseshoe Saloon. And that was the first place I ever worked at Disneyland. And I saw things that just don't happen. I was just like, you know, the place was so haunted. So haunted. It's to the point where if you go there, you go to Disneyland, go to the Golden Horseshoe, and go to any one of the Golden Horseshoe cast members, and you say, do you know anything about this place being haunted, this restaurant? They will either say, yes, I've heard my coworkers talk about it, or yes, I've experienced it myself. That's how haunted it is. To the point where I haven't worked there in almost 15 years, and there's still people to this day that are like, oh yeah, you know, like, it's haunted. It is really crazy. But most of the time what you see at the Golden Horseshoe, and I do mean most of the time, you see objects moving, chairs, furniture sliding around by themselves. Things will be repositioned, you know. Like so Golden Horseshoe is supposed to be like an Old West saloon, right? It's designed to look like, an Old West saloon with a stage and everything. And you go there and you sit and you watch the stage show. And, wow, this is a lot brighter than I remember. But the thing about it is that stage left was what we called Walt's booth. It was probably really the real name is Walt's box, because it's a stage, so it's a box at the side of the stage. That's what they call them. But Walt's booth was a spot that Walt really liked to sit, and I have seen so much stuff in that booth, and it's not based necessarily on Walt Disney. It's just that booth is haunted with something, and it's not something scary. It's just weird, you know. I would stack at the end of the night, because I often worked closing shifts. I'd stack the chairs on the table. I'd walk down away from the booth to finish stacking other chairs. I'd hear a rustling, not a crashing, a rustling. And I look over and I see Walt's booth, and the chairs are back in the position that they were before I stacked them. I had no explanation for that, you know, and it might be like a case of, well, maybe you imagined it, but I was not the only person to imagine that. I had coworkers, you know. I worked not only Golden Horseshoe, but next door to Golden Horseshoe was a restaurant called Stage Door Cafe, and then next to that was Riverbell Terrace. I worked those two restaurants as well as a busboy. And oftentimes, if I was stationed at stationed outside of Golden Horseshoe, and I had a coworker who was stationed in Golden Horseshoe for closing, most of the time they came to me to say, Alex, can you take my Golden Horseshoe shift? Because I hate closing that place. They all had similar stories. They're like, it is haunted, it is spooky, things happen, you know, they don't want to see it. And, you know, and so I often took the shifts because I was more fascinated than scared, honestly. So, yeah. So before that, I never believed in ghosts. And then after that, after seeing all the stuff I saw at that place, I was like, I can't deny it. I can't deny it. Like, there is something weird. And then what really solidified it for me was when I moved up here to Portland and I was renting a room from my sister and her husband. Their apartment was really haunted. And, we all were experiencing stuff simultaneously. And we would I would say something like, I'd tell my brother-in-law, I'd be like, oh my God, you won't even believe what just happened. I'm like, I had this dream that there was a guy in all black and he was walking down the hallway. And then he'd be like, oh my God, I had that exact same dream. You know, I'm like, what? And we had the exact same dream and the same night, you know, and things like that. And then after those dreams, the dreams stopped, and then we started seeing the man in real life. We would all be heading to our different rooms to go to bed or whatever, you know, and I'd be one of the last ones to turn off the light in the living room and go to my room. I'd turn off the light, go to my room, turn around to close my bedroom door, and I could see into the living room that there was a person standing there, silhouetted against the window, very clearly. And I was not the only person to see that. My brother-in-law saw it too, all the time. And so it was just, and you know, all kinds of stuff happened. I mean, that's just like the tiniest fraction of what happened in that apartment. And it was stuff that I don't think he was a malicious spirit, but he was very scary looking. And I think that was just, whew. And I never felt comfortable talking about it until after I moved out of that apartment. Because, you know, it's like, I was afraid of even acknowledging that there was a ghost, you know, like. But what was really crazy was, you know, that we found out that, well, you see, because the apartment below us, our neighbors, their kids every night would wake up screaming. Every night. You could hear it from our apartment. You could hear in the middle of the night the kids wake up screaming and they run to their parents' room. You know, you could hear them, we saw something, you know. And I thought maybe this is related to what we're seeing. And what really confirmed it for me was when we found out that just 3 weeks prior to moving into our apartment, that there was a man who was living in the apartment downstairs who had 3 weeks prior to us moving in had taken his own life. After I learned that, I was like, okay, no, ghosts exist. That I was like, there's no way I'm denying that anymore. I'm like, no, I'm done. Okay. You know, like, no. I maybe, you know, maybe I could have rationalized my years at the Golden Horseshoe as just being odd, weird. But after I found out about that poor man who took his own life and he lived in the apartment beneath us, I was just, I know, I was like, no, there's no denying it. We're, you know. So yeah, that's one of those things where I'm just like, oh, God. And I never felt comfortable really talking about it until after I moved out, because I was just like, I didn't want to acknowledge it, you know. But, you know, there was all kinds of weird stuff, but K4RNA says, be careful with your SSD. They don't last forever. I run SSD RAID setup, and I have had 2 go bad in the last 2 years. But with RAID array, I can rebuild the bad drive. And my friend Chris was telling me, he's like, because he was the one that helped me build my computer, and so he's like, you'll be fine with a solid state drive, just don't overload it. It's when you overload the solid state drive and you try to do too much with it all at once, especially, that they can fail. Which is a lot like a regular hard drive. With a regular hard drive, if you overfill it, or not overfill, but if you fill it up and you try to run too many programs from it at the same time, you can damage it and it will not work. So, yeah, I'm not really too worried about that, but it would suck if it stopped working, because, yeah, because then this computer is my life. It's everything. Let's see. Mike says, Alex, Steve is going live at 4 p.m. your time to talk about the hurricane. Queen Mary is in the path of it. Yeah, I'm not really worried, though, because by the time the hurricane reaches, Los Angeles, it will just be a lot of wind and rain. Nothing really terrible. The Queen Mary's been through worse, honestly. Like, there have been terrible storms where water spouts have come inland towards the Queen Mary. So, I mean, she'll be okay. Just don't add and delete files. Yeah, that's true. All right. So, I think, though, we've been on this live stream for 2 hours and 20 minutes, and I think that's a long time. So I'll probably end up calling it quits, I think. I usually like to end the live stream at a spot on the ship that looks kind of cool. So you get one last view of it, but let's see if I can. Okay, yeah, I thought so. I was like, I don't know. I can't see anything from here. Okay, I know where to go. I know where to go. Oh, it's one of these doors. Where are we? Okay, here we are. This is where I want to end the live stream at. Nice view of this place. Thank you so much, Steve R, for joining, and also, for just being so nice to me. Let's see, and K4RNA. Oh, thank you so much for the donation, K4RNA. All right, folks, I'm going to end up going because I do have to get going and figure out what we're going to do for dinner. But anyway, folks, I wanted to thank you all for joining me, and I will see you all next time. Be sure to watch my video tomorrow at 2 p.m. Pacific time. It's all about steamboats and particular ones that were burnt. Anyway, folks, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.